So I want to lay this out here. The governor went on the offensive on Wednesday in that press conference. He was answering a question, yes, but in my estimation was making a statement as well in suggesting that Scott Woodward would not be involved in the coaching search. Why would Scott Woodward not be involved in the coaching search? He's the sitting athletic director. And his answer to that, time and time again, was about the contract and the liability that it put on the state of Louisiana and the taxpayers. This is something that he said in that press conference. It's something he said again on the Pat McAfee show. It's something he said again with Matt yesterday. This has clearly been the biggest issue he has had. He tweeted out the contract on his X account, Twitter account, whatever you want to call it. This is his chief issue with Scott Woodward, that in Brian Kelly's contract, the state and the taxpayers are on the hook for a $53 million buyout. This is the thing that has been his biggest sticking point. His words, not mine. So he goes on with Matt yesterday. And Matt asked him a question, and I want you to listen to these answers that the governor gave. I'm going to play 4 of them for you. I want you to listen to these answers and the way that they are crafted. And this is when you get into politics, which I don't live in that world very often, but it's very, very easy to decipher. So this is Matt asking if there is any precedent for state dollars being paid to buy out a football coach.
Is there any precedent for state tax dollars paying a buyout for a coach?
Well, I don't know. You mean in the country or in the state of Louisiana?
I couldn't find one in the country today, but I was just using Google and AI. But if you know of any, I'd be curious.
No, I don't know, Matt. But here's the most important thing. I have to live in Realville. I have to know who ultimately has to pay the bill if no one does step up. No one came to the mansion and said, hey, I got a $53 million check. Don't worry, Governor, we got this. Let's make that very clear. But what has happened in the past, and certainly we haven't had a price tag this big, but in the past, it had been TAP or somebody else that had come up there and said, hey, we want to make a change in coaching, and we're willing to help offset whatever these costs are. Nobody stepped up.
Okay, so there's pieces to that I want to get to. The first 3 words out of his mouth are, I don't know. I don't know. Those are the first 3 things he said. I don't know if there's any precedent for that. Now, Governor Landry is correct. In that contract, it says that Brian Kelly is bound by LSU and LSU is state funded. We've covered that. He is correct by the letter of the law, and that is what he is leaning on here. Now, he says nobody came with the check to the mansion and says, I got it. Nobody stepped up, as far as he knows. So this is what he's going to lean on. It's the biggest price tag ever, and I'm concerned because the taxpayers, but is there any precedent for that? I don't know. Okay, we get to the next one. He's suggesting that Scott Woodward is not going to be involved in the next coaching hire. He said that. So Matt asked him about whether or not the LSU would have to honor and pay that remainder of his contract, which is over 3 years and over $5 million. So this is the thing he's most concerned about, is the buyout dollars. That's the biggest thing. And this is the governor's answer.
Would you be in favor? So Scott Woodward has 3.5 years remaining on his deal, and the buyout for Scott Woodward would be north of $6 million. Would you be in favor of removing Scott Woodward if it came down to paying a $6 million buyout?
Look, what I'm going to tell you, Matt, is I'm not interested in having Scott Woodward negotiate and pick the next coach. Look, again, I want to look real carefully at how this agent process works.
So he doesn't answer. He doesn't answer the question. Now, he could lean back on with that answer. He could go, well, I'm more concerned with the $53 million buyout as opposed to the $6 million. And I'm more interested that he doesn't do that negotiation to get us in trouble. He can lean on that. It's fine. But when the money got flipped about that decision, the guy he doesn't want, well, we don't answer that question. And that's politics. And he doesn't have to answer the question. But I hear it. I hear the no answer. So we'll go to the next one. We talk about, Governor Landry brought this up to Matt, talked about LSU coming hat in hand asking the state for money for facilities and all types of things. So Matt just said, well, did the state fund stadium expansion? Governor Landry brought this up. LSU comes to me hat in hand. Well, did the state pay for that? Here's his answer.
What about LSU athletics, however? Because as I understand it, LSU athletics is completely self-generated.
Really? So they built that stadium completely with no tax dollars.
Well,
They
please.
didn't come to the bond commission to be able to bond the projects. I mean, no, Matt. I mean, that's where everybody keeps missing the point. But look, if somebody came to me and said, hey, we need this coach, we're going to pay $100 million, and Matt Moscona is going to put the $100 million up or guarantee the $100 million, that's okay, fine.
Did taxpayer dollars fund stadium expansion?
That's a great question. That's a great question. But I can tell you one thing. Unless they had the cash, they had to bond it. If they went to bond it, they probably went to the bond commission. There is, you know who's on the bond commission? The governor, the Senate president, the speaker, the chairman of revenue, the House chairman of revenue, the House chairman of fiscal affairs, like the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, the attorney general. Like those are all political people.
So Matt asked the question, well, did that happen? Well, it's a great question. He doesn't answer again because that's not what he wants to talk about. I don't know the answer to the question either, but I didn't bring it up. He doesn't answer the question. This is politics. So Matt asked him if there's any precedent for the state buying out a coach. I don't know. Matt asked him, was there any state funds used in stadium expansion? That's a great question. I don't know. And so he continues to not answer any of the questions. And then he finishes with this answer to Matt.
Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that we need to?
I don't think so, Matt. The only thing I would ask is that if people out there, again, if anybody out there can find any facts of the things that I've said that are not true, I'm happy to look at that. But everything I've done with thorough research, and the only concern I have is to the taxpayers of the state and the fans in Tiger Stadium and the boys. And that's the other thing, too. The thing that's also been missing is there's a group of boys down there that have to put that uniform on, not next weekend, but the next, and play a very, very tough team. And I would love to see everybody rally around them.
So if you heard in the middle of that bite, we're done. He says this is his quote. Everything I've done with very thorough research. Really? Research on what? We don't know if there's any precedent for the state paying out the coach. We don't know if there was taxpayer funds used on the stadium. What are we researching? What thorough research did we do other than looking at the contract? And I've conceded the contract does say that. But we all understand in the sports world how that works. And so now you go to this morning's meeting where the understanding of this entire week's ongoing process is that we're concerned with the state being on the hook for the football coach's buyout. That is the biggest issue Governor Landry brought together. And in the press conference today, a Board of Supervisors member who Governor Landry appointed to the board, John Carmouche, said this about funding coaches' buyouts.
The governor had a right to be concerned, and we're working towards solutions. Everything's on the table. But let me make it clear. The state has never, and the taxpayers have never paid for a coach and never will. So
the state and the taxpayers have never paid for a coach and never will. Governor Landry is talking about this contract, which he's right about, but it's disingenuous. It's a disingenuous argument because the Board of Supervisors, which he helps appoint, and the board member, which he appointed, is telling you it's never going to happen. I'm not here telling you it's an impossibility. I'm telling you that we understand how the athletic department works. LSU has been hiring and firing coaches for a long time. The athletic director's job is to agree to a contract with the coach and make sure the funds are there to either continue to fund it or to pay the buyout. And it's always worked that way. And there's no reason to suggest it would not in this case. None. There's just not. This is being disingenuous and it's being political. And Governor Landry can point to that contract all he wants, and he will stand on that leg. But let's just live in the world that's actually, he's saying I live in Realville. Well, let's just live in Realville. The boosters pay these buyouts. They pay the NIL deals. They pay the coaches. They help fund the facilities. And the world goes round and round. This hire didn't work. But we don't have to blow everything up because you don't like what the contract says. And then we go one step further before we get to the conclusion here. Verge Alsbury was asked, because the thing that the governor has been saying, said it in the press conference, said it on McAfee, said it with Matt, we've got to change the structure of these contracts. We've got to make sure that they're paid for winning in the results. And we've got to do things very differently. That's what he says. That's what he's been harping on. These contracts, these agents are in collusion with the athletic directors. We've got to do things differently. That's what he says. And then the interim athletic director, which the Board of Supervisors, which he appoints, was put in front of the microphone today and was asked, hey, do we have to do some things differently with this contract? And here's what Verge Alsbury said.
I've spoken to the board members on side of me right here and other board members, and our job, I was told to get the best football coach there is. And don't worry about that at all. So my thing is, we're going to go out there together as a team, and we get the best contract, get the best coach we have, and whatever it takes to get that person here, we will do.
When he said in the middle of that bite, we don't care about that at all, that's the contract. We don't care about the contract. And that tells me, and I'm reading between the lines here, that the boosters are ready to go get a coach. There will not be a drastic and significant change in terms of the contract for the next coach, because Verge is in charge of going to get the next coach. He's going to be in charge of getting that contract together. And it's not going to change. This all essentially boils down to one thing. The governor did not approve of Scott Woodward in that role, and he set out to make sure that Scott Woodward would not keep that job. And this is the way that he went about doing it. That's my opinion as a talk show host who has sat in this state and watched this happen. And guess what? The governor has the absolute right as an elected official. This state elected Jeff Landry. He can appoint whoever he wants to the Board of Supervisors. He was elected. And those board members can do whatever they want. Nothing here has been done illegally. No, there's no corruption here. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just suggesting that this whole show that has gone on for 3 days has been disingenuous, and the dots do not connect. The governor has not given ample evidence that there is abundance of state funds headed somewhere it's not supposed to go. He was asked some questions about state funds in other areas and didn't really have an answer, didn't want to answer. And this is the result of a direct contradiction to what he's saying in the press conference today. It's just not that hard to comb through. So LSU may end up in a much better space because of all this. I don't know the future. I can just look at what's gone on here, and it doesn't add up. This whole process doesn't add up. So Scott Woodward's not the athletic director anymore. That we know. And the governor keeps on beating on. And I'm pulling for him. I hope he does great things for the state of Louisiana. I hope the people that are hired at LSU moving forward are phenomenal. But I don't have to buy the last 72 hours. I don't have to buy that. I live in the sports world. I know how all this stuff works. And some of this stuff just doesn't add up. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.